Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World with me, Ashimkumar. Tonight we examine two major developments shaping global debates on democracy and accountability. In Washington, US lawmakers are advancing a bipartisan bill that could label Russia a state sponsor of terrorism over the forced deportation of Ukrainian children, an ultimatum with severe consequences. Meanwhile, in Europe, the EU's highest human rights honour, the Sakharov Prize, has been awarded to imprisoned journalists Andrzej Poczobut and Mzia Amagliobeli for their courageous defence of truth and democracy. Joining me to lay out the implications of these is Matthewday, senior online editor at TVP World. Matthew, great to have you back. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Great to be back.
So let's start with the US approach to, or decision, moving towards a decision of calling Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. I mean, the first thing that struck me was that it's a bipartisan bill. So there seems to be quite a lot of support for moving this forward. What does it actually mean?
Well, we have two bits of legislation, one in the Senate, one in the House of Congress. They both aim to, well, they could end up with the US calling Russia a state sponsor of terrorism. And the condition is children kidnapped by Russia. Russia has apparently kidnapped maybe up to, some estimates put it even up into hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian children. The official estimate is around about 19 to 20,000. Yale University, which has studied this intensively, they put the number at 35,000. And the bill, which is in Congress at the moment, if passed, it will give Russia like 60 days to return the children and give evidence that these children are being returned and reintegrated. If that does not happen, then Russia could be classified, designated as a state sponsor of terrorism. Now, this can introduce a couple of things. If it was just if we're in a normal environment, it would mean that Russia could be hit with sanctions. It would be an embargo on the sale of military equipment to Russia. Now, of course, those are already in place.
Actually, can I just pause you there for a second? Because I just want to clarify the situation. What we're talking about is the kidnapping, the relocation, transportation of children from Russian-occupied Ukraine into mainland Russia, if I can put it like that. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, right. And so basically the US Congress and Senate are saying, bring them back, give them back to their parents, and put them back in their houses where they were before they were taken away.
Exactly. These children, they were in care homes in occupied Ukraine, they're in orphanages, or some were just separated from their parents or from their guardians because of the war. And there are reports that many of them have just been taken into Russia. They may be adopted in Russian families, or more commonly, they go to camps where they get re-educated, where they get military training and get turned upon their own country by the Russian authorities, which is quite really disturbing when you think about it.
Extremely disturbing. I mean, but this is something that has been done over centuries, is it not, by different countries? I mean, Stalin did something very similar. Relocated whole populations to different parts of the Soviet Union. Yeah. Is this simply following a long tradition in Russia?
It does have rather unfortunate echoes of the past, and of course the re-education programs were kind of symbolic of the horrific regimes of the last century. Stalinism, or go to Cambodia as well, they have re-education.
Right.
And it is heartening that there is this bipartisan attempt within the United States to try and get legislation through, when you consider just how toxic the environment is in American politics at the moment. But this is one area where there does seem to be common support.
Right.
And the only thing which may get in the way, of course, is the president, who has been rather reluctant to take any steps to enforce harsher sanctions on Russia.
Right. Well, we'll come to the president in just a second. So you were telling us what the implications were of calling Russia a state sponsor of terrorism, and you were saying that basically under normal circumstances that would mean sanctions.
Yeah.
But these are not normal circumstances.
But they can impose secondary sanctions, which is one important aspect which could help push Putin to the negotiating table. And also it's a kind of matter of PR, like to be classified a state sponsored of terrorism. Russia would join, I think, like North Korea, Iran, I think Syria was, I don't know what its status is now. And that's a pretty bad camp to be in. And to be associated with that camp may persuade countries that interact with Russia, persuade countries that trade with Russia to step back or walk away slowly from its interaction with Russia.
Well, that would be the hope. Unfortunately, countries that are dealing with North Korea, for example, which, as you say, has already been dubbed a state sponsor of terrorism. I mean, China is happy to deal with them. So is Russia, and I'm sure there are others as well. Iran being so. The people in countries like those don't seem to care. Do you think they'll care or stop dealing with Russia if this bill goes through?
They won't, but of course Russia is very reliant on good relations with many countries around the world. You take like India, for example, as a prime example. Okay, these things, they don't carry a huge amount of economic weight behind them, but as I said, the sort of political implications, the PR implications for Russia could be quite bad.
Mm.
And would you want to be associated with a country designated a state sponsor of terrorism? It's maybe the optics are not good, the look isn't very good.
Right, the look, and as we know, the look is important to Putin. But Putin has been designated a war criminal by the International Criminal Court. Doesn't seem to have slowed him down any, does it?
No, it hasn't, unfortunately. And of course, he was deemed a war criminal for the kidnapping of children as well.
Same thing, yeah.
Yeah. And it hasn't slowed him down, even though, of course, it does restrict his movements a wee bit. He hasn't been able to travel quite as freely as he would probably like to. He would like to strut his stuff on the international stage. Of course, Russia likes to believe it is a premier world power, but the leader of this supposed premier world power can't really go to many countries for fear of arrest.
Yeah, sadly, he was allowed to go to the United States and meet with President Trump, which is a bit of a shame. So, do we think this bill is going to pass? It's
interesting. Up until last weekend, we'd probably say no, it might get delayed, and what will delay it is the position of President Trump. But now President Trump cancelled his supposed meeting with Putin in Budapest, which sort of reflects his growing frustration, his growing impatience with Putin, and he might think, that's it, I'm done with trying to play with Putin, and I'm going to throw my weight behind these bits of legislation. And I think the people who are proposing the legislation, I think that can give some hope that this last check will be removed, and then the legislation can become law, and Russia will be considered.
Yeah, I mean, it is, as we've all seen, quite difficult to predict what President Trump is going to do next. However, we have seen him put pressure on the Indian Prime Minister to stop taking Russian oil, and that seems to have worked. And that's contradictory to the way that he treated Putin on the red carpet in Alaska, or the fact that he had a 2.5-hour long conversation with Putin. So we're not quite sure. So there is still a chance, wouldn't you say, that he will finally sign this bill and make it into law?
I think there is a chance, but then with Trump, given his general reluctance to impose anything tough on Russia, he talks about it all the time. He talks about secondary sanctions all the time. Never happen. He talked about the Tomahawk cruise missiles a week or so ago, and of course now we know it's not going to happen,
right.
Or at least not in the near future. So Trump's prevailing attitude is to step back from doing hard stuff to Russia.
Right.
But having said that, maybe now he is slowly being A, losing patience, and B, realising that Russia just doesn't want to play the peace game. It's just going to carry on waging war until it gets a hard kick.
Right. Well, we shall be waiting to see what happens next with bated breath. I want to move on now to the Sakharov Prize, and I'd like to start with a couple of sound bites that we have, and I'll take your view on those. Matthew.
Dear colleagues, this afternoon. So, following the decision that was taken at today's conference of Presidents, it is my privilege to announce that the 2025 Sakharov Prize for Freedom of Thought has been awarded to Andrei Pochobut from Belarus and Zia Amlagobeli from Georgia. So both are journalists currently in prison on trumped-up charges simply for doing their work and for speaking out against injustice. Their courage has made them symbols of the struggle for freedom and democracy. And this House stands with them and with all those who continue to demand freedom.
Right, so that was Roberta Metsola, President of the European Parliament. So tell me, what does this prize mean?
It means that people can focus on serious human rights violations, and it gives publicity to people who are fighting for human rights. And if you look at the history of the prize, I think it goes back to the Cold War days, before the collapse of the Soviet Union. I think one of the first people who received this prize was actually Alexander Dubček, who was the head of state of Czechoslovakia, and he was deposed by the 1968 Soviet invasion.
Right.
So that was a backdated one, but it reflected the Cold War. And for me, it's sort of fascinating if you look at the history of it. So the first few winners of this prize, they were all Cold War related. A lot of them were Cold War related. Then the Cold War ended, and people who received this prize from all over the world, from South America, from Africa, from Asia, from China. But now, if you look at the more recent winners, you see Europe cropping up again, and particularly countries that were former members of, well, part of the Soviet Union. And now you have it in particular again. You have it in Belarus, where Andrei Pochobut lives, and also from Georgia, where Zia Amlagobeli is from. And it's like this Cold War echo is back. And for me, it's really shocking, particularly when you think about Belarus. Belarus is a European country. And now when you look at what's going on there, it's like the Cold War all over again.
It is. It certainly is sad to say. But what is it that it's awarded for? Is it awarded for defiance, bravery, a general work on human rights? What are the criteria?
Well, it's awarded for standing up for human rights, and by doing that, you have to put your freedom, your liberty on the line. And these are very extremely brave people, both of them. They stand up for truth. They try to criticise the government, and this is what happens to them. So, to get this prize is, well, okay, for them it's quite symbolic because they can't reap the rewards of it because they're stuck in really nasty jails. But for people around them, for people who are campaigning for human rights, civil rights, both in Georgia and Belarus, it provides them publicity, and it provides extra impetus, and it provides them with a sort of will to keep on fighting.
Right. So when we say publicity, Pochobut, as we know, is a Pole who was working in Belarus. What does that mean in terms of how does it reflect on Poland's attitude towards human rights, if at all?
Well, I think Poland has been one of the most vocal and active campaigners on Andrzej Poczobut's behalf, as you would expect, and that activism, I'm sure, was taken into account when they were deciding on who this prize should go to, because Poland provides an extra voice. Okay, Belarusian opposition activists, Belarusian human rights campaigners can call people and say, this guy needs our help, this guy needs our support, but that is a lot easier when you have a country backing you as well, and Poland has been very good at that.
Yes, certainly. I mean, we've often had guests to talk about Pochabut's situation. Now I want to talk about the Georgian journalists. And it's interesting, isn't it, that in this case, or this year, they're both journalists. What does that tell you about the state of journalism in today's environment, certainly in this region?
Well, I think it's a very depressing environment. Well, Belarus, it doesn't have a free press anymore. It has a very active and a very good, shall we say, foreign exile press, underground press, but state press is gone. Free press in Belarus is gone. If you talk to people in Georgia, they say that it's going exactly the same way. Georgia still does have independent press, but it's disappearing, or it's under intense pressure from the state to conform, and budgetary rules are being brought in, foreign ownership rules are being brought in, which make it very hard for a free and independent media to work in both countries. So the fact that both our journalists and the prize has focused in on journalism, I think, is very, very important, because it does shine a light on the sorry state, or the miserable state, of the press in both these countries. Indeed it does.
I want to talk just for the last minute or so that we have left about the Georgian journalist Amaga Belli, excuse me. What was her stance that attracted this award?
I think it's because she has been a fearless critic of the Georgian government, and also the fact that once she was arrested and put in pre-trial detention, and then after that, of course, sentenced to 2 years, she went on hunger strike. She put her physical well-being in danger to stand up for her rights, and also the rights of her fellow Georgian citizens. That is a very brave thing to do, and that makes you quite exceptional as well, because very few people would take
that risk.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I think two very brave people there, Matthew. And thank you very much for coming along and laying all of this out for our audience.
My pleasure, as always.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of this episode of News in Depth. Don't go away, there are lots more coming up. Goodbye.